Hello everybody, welcome again to my channel. Today we are going to see about statements in C programming. Now let us see what is a statement. Statement in C can be a declaration statement or any code in C which is performing action in a program, and it has to be ending up with a semicolon. Statements in C can be classified into three different criteria. One is based upon action, second is based upon number, and third based on the roles. Coming to based on actions, they can be further classified into executable statements and non-executable statements. Based on numbers, it can be classified into simple statements which may include a single statement and compound statements which include a block of statements. Based on roles, they can be categorized into declaration and definition statements, then null and expression statements, label statements, and flow control statements. These flow control statements can be further classified into branching statements and iterative statements. Now, let's see the detailed description of the executable statements, which is coming under the category of action. Okay. So generally, this executable statements will be the codes which are performing an action. This action can be either assignments, that is, assigning a value or a variable to another variable, or also it can contain the printing statements or input taking statements. Also, it includes looping statements and branching statements. And of course, the function calls and definitions also included in this particular executable statements. And generally, these statements appear inside the body of a function. They do not appear outside the body of the function. Okay. Then these particular functions, when they are compiled, they generate a machine code so that it can be further processed by the computer. Okay. So here we have said that already the assignment statement or also belong to this executable statement. You have to keep it in your mind that the global definitions, that is the definitions which are appearing outside the body of a function with keyword const, is a non-executable statement. Okay. So now comes the non-executable statement. So these non-executable statement, just it will be describing or it will be saying how to uh, build a program. That is, it may include memory allocation statements and the function prototypes, the global variable declaration, the constant declaration, and preprocessor directives. That is, these are all the things which are defining the things which are being coded. Okay. Or else we can also say that these are all the things which will be defining the code which is beneath this particular type of non-executable statements. And generally, these non-executable statements, they doesn't uh, generate any machine codes because they don't want to be executed, right? And they always appear maximum. We cannot say it is always. They usually appears on the um, top of any particular function, or it may appear outside the function. Okay. So then, and the thing is, it has to be on the top of the executable statement because these non-executable statements will be defining the needed and necessary meanings for the executable statements. And also in C programming, we have to know that the program is executed from top to bottom so that these non-executable statements, which are defining the executable statements, will be appearing on the top of the executable statements. So by seeing an example, you will be getting more deeper into that. This is an example which is showing both the executable and the non-executable statements. Now, in detail, we can see what are the executable statements and what are the non-executable statements. In this program, I have highlighted the non-executable statements, which are nothing but the declaration statements. Here, the direct declaration, that is 20, value has been assigned to the variable a, and in the second line, calculation, that is a star 20 or a asterisk 20, which is multiplying the value of a by 2, has been assigned to b. Okay, so these two statements are non-executable statements. The highlighted lines are the non-executable statements. Here, specifically to say these non-executable statements are assignment statements. The values has been assigned to two variables a and b. So now I have highlighted the executable statements. Now just look on to this program. The non-executable statements has to lie over the executable statement. The reason is we are just printing the value of b through executable statement printf, and this value of b is available in the non-executable statement content. Okay, so this is why the non-executable statements will be said as the one which are defining the or giving some meaning or how to execute the program via the executable statements. Hope you all have understood what is non-executable and executable statements. So in this slide, we can just see how the statements has to be arranged. As I said above, the second statement in non-executable statement is not a complete non-executable statement because it is having a calculation part. That is, it is having or it is taking the value of a and multiplying it by 2. So it is a partial operation has been done. So now imagine that if I have exchanged these two lines, I cannot perform the operation which is happening in b is equal to a star 2 because a has not been defined. So always keep it in your mind that the non-executable statement should always lie over the executable statements. Now, let us see the next categorization, that is based on numbers. In that, we are going to see the simple statements. So the simple statement includes any statement. It can be an executable statement or a non-executable statement, what we saw in the previous category, but it should be a single line statement which is terminated by a semicolon. So here we are seeing three examples of three simple statements. The first one is a definition statement, which is assigning the value 10 to the variable a. Second one is an expression statement, or we can say a statement which is doing some calculations. The third statement is an assignment statement, that is, the value of a has been assigned to the sum of value of a and the value 10. So these type of statements, that is any single statement which is terminated by a semicolon, is called as a simple statement. Next, we can see the compound statements. So now we can see the compound statement. Compound statements are nothing but group of simple statements enclosed inside a curly braces. Actually, these curly braces contains many sequential simple statements. And to your note, these compound statements are also called as blocks, and they are treated as a single unit until and unless it is having a jump statement in it. Okay, yeah? Then this particular compound statement encloses many simple statement, each is terminated by a semicolon, but altogether after the ending of the ending curly braces, it does not have any semicolon. So that is, the compound statement is not terminated by a semicolon. And this particular compound statement can also be empty without any statements inside it. It is similar to that of a null statement in C. And inside this block of statements, that is inside this compound statements, the existence of the executable and non-executable statement follows the same rules as we saw in the previous session. So in this slide, we can see a few different representations of compound statement. The first example shows an if statement and it is followed by a compound statement which is null statement. That is, it doesn't has any sequential statement inside the curly bracket. So this can also be represented by just putting a semicolon after the if statement. And coming to the second statement, there is a printf statement which is printing hello to the output screen, and it is followed by the compound statement, and next it cannot be represented as just a simple statement. So always keep it in your mind that there are different representations of a compound statements. Now let us see the categorizations based on roles. In that, first one is declaration and definition statements. Now let us see what is declaration and definition. Definition allocates the memory for the identifier, whereas declaration does not allocate the memory, rather it introduces the name and data type of the identifier to the compiler. If you want to introduce a variable to the compiler, you have to use the keyword extend, which will not allocate any memory for the particular variable. Whereas for definition, you can just write the data type followed by the identifier, in which here the example is int a. So a is an integer data type, so for which the compiler will be allocating 2 bytes. So next we are going to see about null and expression statements. As the name says, null statement does nothing in the program. That is, when we find a null statement defined just by a semicolon or with a pair of curly braces, it does nothing. It acts as a placeholder. So why do we use a null? So imagine that there is a place which has to be occupied in the program, but in that particular place, you don't want to write any statements. So let us consider the following example. There is a condition which exists when A is equal to B, but you don't want to perform anything for that particular condition. You can just put a null statement over there. Either it can be a pair of curly braces or it can be a semicolon. So you have to note one thing. In case if I am writing the entire statement, if A is equal to B followed by a pair of curly braces and completing by a semicolon, actually it is considered as compound statement, which is the curly braces, followed by the null statement indicated by the semicolon. So expression statements. So what are all these expressions? So expressions are nothing but a computing statement, or which is performing some computation. So it is similar to that of a normal statement which is ending up with a semicolon. So now in this example, we can see that the value of A can be given by adding the two constants 2 and 3. In the second line, you can see the value of A is given by adding the value of A and 1 to it. And in the third statement, you can see a printf statement, which is nothing but a function call operator, that is a pair of parentheses. So this is also is invocating a function to print the words which are enclosed inside the double quotes. So these type of statements which are performing some operations or computation tasks will be coming under the expression statements. Now we can see the label statements. As the name suggests, label statements are for labeling a statement, that is giving a name for the statement using an identifier. So these identifiers can also be replaced by some keywords such as case and default. So according to these particular specification of the labeling term, we are classifying this label statements into three, which are nothing but identifier label statements, case label statements, and default label statements. Now we can see the examples for each of these types. First comes the identifier label statements. So identifiers are similar to that of the names given to the statement. It can be of any name as you like. So the syntax is the identifier or the name for the statement followed by a colon and the statement. Here we can see an example that the identifier for the statement is output and the statement is printf statement, which is going to print the word hello in the output screen. Next comes the case label statement. That is, it is the case keyword which is used inside the switch cases. These case label statements are used inside the switch cases for defining different cases. And the keyword case is used. This case keyword is followed by a character or an expression or an integer. So in this example, you can see three different cases. That is case A, which is nothing but a character, and case 2 plus 3, where 2 plus 3 is an expression, and case 2, which is a pure integer. And coming to invalid cases, you cannot go for the cases labeled with floating point numbers or some variables. In case of you're going to such things, it will be considered as an error. So next comes the default label statements. So this is also the label statement which is to be used inside the switch case. This particular default label statement is with the keyword default followed by a colon and the statement for default cases. That is, inside the switch cases, you may define several cases. So rather than that, if anything else option is available, the default case will be automatically executed. And it is not mandatory that you have to have the default case inside the switch case. So it can also be avoided inside the switch case if not needed. Next, we can see the flow control statements. These flow control statements are typically divided into two things, which are nothing but the branching statements and the iterative statements. Generally, we have another one category which is called as the sequential statements. That is nothing but the statements written one after the other, and it is being executed in the same order as that of what it has been written. Now, we can see this flow control statements in the part 2 video. Thank you for watching my video. Please join again to watch all my videos.